Okay, I'm going to show my screen. Okay, sorry. Okay, so to kick us off, I will be demoing point of sales SO quote functionality. This is a pretty big update, and I will walk you through it. So one of the main things is adding the quote table. And so this pulls in all the quotes. Is driven by the lookup functionality. So you're able to modify all of the columns and everything like that. Some of the newer things that we've done is when you click on a row, now you'll see a lot more actions. So now you have the ability to edit quote, copy quote, create an order from a quote, as well as download an email. And then you'll also be able to access those from the action button. These are all driven by the permissions from MRK control. So you're able to toggle all of these on and off, with the exception of download an email. Those are persistent. Um, and so we also have the ability, so if you have SO quote and order access, if you select a customer, you'll be prompted to create either a quote or an order. And so we'll go ahead and create a quote. And so you'll be able to see all of the quote information, and this differs a little bit from the order header info. So this is just information, just more specific to quotes. And so you're able to modify it. And some of the items is like the cost method. If you want to do markup price or price file, you could do that. And it'll also update the prices if you have anything in your cart. Okay. And then so once you select, when you go in the part selection, you could go ahead and add a cart. And you'll be able to see within the cart, you're able to see the price table, and this has the breakdowns versus quantity and the markup. So from there, I think that about is it for the quoting. So once you create a quote, it'll kick you back to the customer selection. And so this is a pretty significant change. So we're now dropping the sales module. So now that we have opportunities, quotes, and orders here, there's just no need. All of the capabilities are within here. But for customers, if you were to select a customer and go into the opportunities, quotes, or orders tab, you'll see the familiar quoting table. And similarly here, you'll see the edit, copy, create order. And so if you actually click edit quote here, it'll actually pop you into a new tab, and it'll pull all the information at point of sale. So we're no longer allowing you to make any edits within the customers module. We're consolidating all of that into the new sales module. I think that about wraps it up for me. Greg, are you ready to show some of the parts info?
Yeah, so I will jump in here. Let me share my screen. So related to our quote changes, and we demoed this in the last meeting, but it was pretty early time. So I'll jump in and show a few other details here. So we now have the ability to define relationships between parts. So I'm going to go over into the inventory module and pull up a part here. And if the system supports it, you'll now see a related parts section here where you can define groupings of relationships between parts. So this dropdown is indicating that this part GLB has relationships defined for related parts, also purchased, this specific option group, and then a random option group 10. You can also nest these. Foo was kind of an odd one that I must have had thrown in there for testing. Sorry about that. But when you choose an option group, then you can see the parts that are defined as being in that particular option group. And then we have a few other attributes related to the related part items that we've added since last time. So you can now define a default quantity, and you can also define whether that related part is required or not. So you can adjust that by clicking on the item, and you can change the default quantity or whether it is required. Click update, and that will be reflected there. And then these two checkboxes up here are attributes of the relationship group itself, so the option group as we call it. So you can indicate whether an option group requires a selection. So we'll jump in here in a second and we'll go into quotes and actually start building one out. But if a selection is required, it means that as you're building a quote or an order and this parent part number is added, before you can finalize the quote, it will make sure that you have made a selection from that option group. And again, I'll demonstrate that here in a moment. And then the track relationship is just indicating that as we're adding these parts to a quote or an order, we're keeping track of the relationship between the child parts and their parent part. You can also add additional option groups. So these are the option groups that are defined. If you wanted to establish related parts in a different option group for this GLB part that I'm in here right now. And then the nesting that we described here, that happens through this add child group. So you can nest them as deep as you want. So let me hop over back into point of sale and show what this looks like when you're building out a quote. So I'm just going to choose a customer here and indicate that I'm building a quote. And I'm going to go to the part selection and choose that part that we were just in. Whoops, I had the auto add part defined here. Let me, bear with me 1 second while I clear this out here real quick. So this was a feature that was demoed in another meeting. We have the option to auto add the part. What that means is if you search for a part and one item is returned, it will automatically add it, which was the case here. There was one part. So if I click to show the detail of my part GLB, you now see those option groups that were defined inside of the inventory module. And there's a couple different things that can be indicated here. For one, each of these option groups is set up to do tracking. So we disable the add to cart on the child items until the parent item is added. And we indicate whether a selection is required for the option group. And another thing that we have now is the ability to show if an item that's related is a kit. And we can then click in and view the detailed components of that kit and individually add those to the cart as well. But let me go ahead and add this parent item to the cart. So now on the back end, we are automatically taking care of adding the required parts. So this notification that showed up in the background said these items have been added because they are required. And then this is just a reminder that option group 10 requires a selection. So now we've got these items added to our quote. If I try to save it, it will validate on the back end that that option group has not had its criteria fulfilled. So it's going to require that we go in and add an item from that option group before it'll let us finalize it. So we'll scroll down here and add an item from option group 10. And now if we try to save the quote, it should let us go ahead and do that. All right, so I know that was pretty quick, but that's kind of showing how the related parts flows into the sales quote creation and allows you to sort of have a guided quoting of related parts and enforce requirements for the required pieces and making selections from all the required option groups. So I will now hand it back off to Mike.
Yep, I gotcha. And I just wanted to pause here and just say kudos, guys, because it's been a long time coming on getting these things moved over into point of sale. We'll have a future update that will handle naming of the page to help with clarity around, oh, is it point of sale? Is it sales? Deal with all of that. But we've been in this state where sales was there, but it was not really like in production finalized there, and we weren't encouraging or even really having customers use it. Versus point of sale is massively in production, right? 500 plus users in there using that every day. So for this immediate release, we've erred on removing sales and not disrupting the icon, the name of the point of sale page. We'll give this time to breathe and work through it from there. But we're really excited about it, not just for what it's bringing to the customers, but even for our own internal process. I mean, our sales team has been limping along with sales as it stood. So this is going to be huge for them. I know had real positive feedback so far in the demos and trials there. So that stuff is out to test environments now. So look for the release very soon. Yeah, kudos. I will take over here. We got a couple things that have previously released that we just wanted to touch on. Some stuff from the 2.8 release and the 2.9 release, both from earlier this month. First, some quality of life changes within the accounting page. Now, when you drill down into any of these sections and payables and receivables, you're just going to be shown the stuff that's still open, which is really what represents the balance here. Technically, previously, it was not wrong to be showing everything. Closed stuff was not contributing to the balance, but a user really is not interested in the closed stuff when they get into that. So that's much more streamlined now, helps with the more accounting collections or payables workflow. Also, it's defaulting to showing 25 things in the filter instead of 5, so that helps. One of the other things that happened in one of these releases too was the ability to, and this was system wide, so any of the data tables that have these filters, to be able to make your selection and hit enter on your keyboard and have that wire up to the search. So, less touches potentially, especially for those filters where you're typing something in. So that works nice. The other thing, and we kind of see it here on the nav bar, but this one in 2.9, it was the ability to add custom links to the nav bar and the ability to have multiple dashboards on the main dashboards page. So right here, we've got 2 dashboards linked in, the Zoom Assist Employee Financial, and on this sample Northwind Orders dashboard. And you can see here, we've added some custom links in the dev site just to zoomassist.com, the pyramid, so on and so forth, product documentation, Rover BI. That is all driven by an update to Web Control, web.control. So to take advantage of that stuff, you've got to be on latest version of Rover. And you'll note the Zoom Assist system has not received this upgrade yet, this update to bring this functionality over. So we don't have custom links enabled over there yet. Need somebody to process an upgrade, M3, an ACE upgrade. Let's get current there. But this is what that structure looks like on the Pages tab. You can come in and define your page names and display names to control for all of that. Eventually, we see allowing icon customization. Right now, we just took one of the few unused icons we had from the graphic designer who built our icon pack. But having something a little bit cleaner for the link in the future would be nice, or customizable there. You can specify URLs. You can control whether or not it's an embedded link versus an external hyperlink. So these dashboards are marked as embeds, and it's just embedding that content in the tabs versus those other links like to zoomassist.com or hyperlinks that pop to a new tab window. Simple stuff, but relevant. And the page name piece allows you to control access through security.e2. So just like security.e is iterating over the Rover forms that are defined, it'll also take into account these web control entries. So if you wanted to say, not let the sales team see some accounting dashboards or something, you could control for that way. Pretty cool stuff. That's all live already in 2.9 and just requires that any system that's using the web be updated, right? If you're running latest, then you have access to it. If there are no questions on anything up to this point, we'll keep it rolling and kick to John because we got a lot of content to get through still.
Sure. All right. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about how I'm using AI. And I use it mostly for redundant tasks or anything like that. As you can see here, I've got a case statement in my conversion routine for item transactions. And, there's a lot of transaction codes for this customer that's in their data. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to code all that. So what I did was I told it, I said, edit the case statements and you can reference what file to look at. In this case, it's this program. And using the transaction codes from over there at that other markdown file I had, blah, blah, blah. Just go through and make it like I've got it in there, but just do the rest of them and add some comments. So I'll kick that off and then it'll go through and do its thing. And we'll see how it turns out here. Love live demos with AI. You never know what you're going to get. But it's pretty consistent. It does pretty good for me. Also, incidentally, well, hang on. Let's see what it does here. Yeah, see, there it goes. It's doing it just right. So it just went through and it just added in all. Now you could be a Neanderthal and you could sit there and copy paste that in there over and over again if you want to, but there's a lot less error prone. You still got to double check in AI's work all the time. But what's really cool about this is see down here at the bottom, this case else, I just left that blank, but it knew to fill it in with my normal error check to call my subroutine down there. So hang on, let me say keep on this. So yeah, like you can see down here where I've used that before, it recognized that and it said, you probably want to report that error. So it called it an unknown transaction code, went down there and called my error subroutine for me, and it just figured that out on its own. It's pretty cool. So that's basically, I use it for that, and then I use it for, like super IntelliSense when it comes to stuff. So let's see here. Let's go down here. So if off doc, whoops. It's getting really good at pick code. The more I use it, it seems like equals, see, and it just filled it all out for me. It said, if the off doc is nil, then let's report that error, and it did all the error check for me. So that's what I use it for. Short and sweet, but yeah. Any other little things I do is like this table here for the markdown. It used to be text, and I'll put it in here, and then I'll say, hey, turn that text into a markdown table for me. And then that way it turns it into this nice table that I can preview and read in the program. And the other thing I used it for that was really wicked was I had an entire SQL database that I had to convert each table into a text file. Now you can use SSIS and script all that to where it'll go through each table and do it. What I told AI to do it is I gave it, how did I do it? I wrote a program that connected to the SQL database with Python. And I told it to spin through all the tables that could be exported, including the views. And it turned around and wrote a program that will spit out every table and every view as a text file, as well as it made documentation for me. So it makes it easy for me to go through and manually map this stuff. So here's one of the documents it spit out for me. So as it did that, it made a little table layout for me that has, the column's heading name, what column number it is, and then some example data, what's in the table. And I even have it to where it's got a little highlight so I can keep my place in a document. But I just push one button and it exports that SQL database for me every single time. So it's a big time saver in my opinion. But again, you got to double check its work, keep an eye on it, but it does really good. And that's it.
That's fantastic. Thank you, John. And I just linked in chat, but we have my big takeaway here is if you're not yet using VS Code to be working with PIC, you really need to make the switch. I mean, what it does by default is huge. Add in MV Basic, then add in AI, and it's really like it makes very little sense most of the time to be using other editors at this point. There's just too much power available there. So give it a shot, run through our setup docs. There's this one, I'll link another one in a second, which goes into some of the Rover specific things that we can be doing with it too, that Andrew has set up and John has contributed to and everything. But it's a fantastic use case, fantastic jumping point for over half of the company, right? Being so engineer heavy on our side. So very cool stuff, John. Thanks for taking some time to show that. We're going to kick it over to Alex next to continue with some of the product showcase stuff, this time around production scheduling.
Alrighty. So we've got a number of changes kind of either already out or kind of in the pipeline here to go through. So to start, the work orders listing here in production, this can be lookup based, controlled by woe.control. You can select if you want to look up or not. Still the option of viewing as it previously was, but if you select a lookup, you'll get this format. So going into a work order, now we have a lot more detail here. This should essentially replicate the general tab for woe.e, and then we've got the routing and scheduling tab as well. So you can go through here, and some of this does actually fire live validations, kind of similar how point of sale can rely on the back end to perform validations. We do the same thing here. So if I were to enter a different work order in the recipient work order IDs, this will trigger a validation, and then we get the part number loaded up. And this is all correlative driven as well. So you can change that on the fly. And all of these fields are essentially tied back to the FDIC in some form. So we can see here that the description and the revision, these are both blocked out. And we can go to input restrictions in security.e, sorry, and we can see that those are actually marked to be blocked. So you can control any of the fields here like that. Likewise, if you revoke change permissions on woe.e, you will no longer see the save button and you'll no longer be able to edit anything here. Going over to the routing and scheduling tab, we've got the routing and scheduling display. Opening up any of these kind of in the same format like the ticket display, you can get into the details here, and we do support having alternate work centers here. So if you want to select a different work center, go with 520, and we'll actually get a notification. We went to the back end, and the back end validation said, hey, this operation is actually part of a phase along with operations A2, A3. So all of them are going to be updated to the new work center. And then hopping over to the scheduling side, we've got some updates on how things can be added to the table. We can see a substatus here of picker printed as well. If I drag one of these items from the phase into the chart, and I'll start with A2, we'll see it actually scheduled everything on that phase in order. So A1 actually got scheduled first, and it also pushed out the existing operations on the chart to make room for what was scheduled there, highlighting it in yellow to notify that you have indeed changed these other items. We'll just kind of scroll out to see. So it did even shift it out to outside of the view of the actual table originally. And another little change, we are adding a little border to these bars so that you can see where one ends and then the next one begins. Sometimes when they're all yellow especially, it can be hard to tell them apart. And so those are the primary changes, I believe. A quick overview. Go ahead and save this as well. And so you'll also see, because this work order had a different substatus, it is now colored according to that substatus as opposed to just the released status itself. And that is all defined in woe.control, which I don't have open right now, I don't think. Oh, yes, I do. So yeah, you can see different substatuses here are different colors.
That's also where you define the main table lookup, right? So which is
right here.
that field just below, and that piece went into production in 2.9. So we've got a mixture here of a couple of things that are coming down the pipe and a few things that went out in 2.8 and 2.9 earlier this month. Anything else you want to add to that, Alex? Or anybody else have any questions there?
I think that was it for right now.
Okay, then I think to stick the landing here, we wanted to close this on some recent changes to the ticketing system and some upcoming changes. Christian, do you have those ready to roll?
Yes, just give me 1 second.
One of them is fast. It went in 2.9, and it's the addition of a refresh button to the tickets page. So if you've got your filters set and you don't want to reload the entire page and have to reset your filters, you can now just click that refresh button. It'll re-execute the query. It kind of speaks to what Susie brought up in the company meeting. Makes that a lot more streamlined. It's still not automatic refreshes or notification pings, but it is a huge quality of life improvement in and of itself to just be able to click that button and roll. So we snuck that one in very quickly, but Christian's got some cool stuff here. We'll let you take the floor.
Yes, thank you. So we have some updates to tickets and time. We've introduced the more tab interface that will allow you to open tickets within the tabs. So you can see that we have two new tabs recently viewed, and the normal tickets. As Mike mentioned, now we have a refresh to pull in fresh data. So now when you open a ticket, it'll open in this interface, and it's the same one as before, but it allows you to navigate between them um, and open up multiple at the same time. And one of the things that we've added is so when you're in recently viewed, if you open up a ticket, it'll pull in that information here. And one thing we've also added is the ability to refresh this data. So this could always be updated as well. So it's not just stale every time you log in. Um, this is still a work in progress, something, still experimental at this point. But we think it'll be a massive improvement, being able to hold on to ticket information and being able to update them quickly.
And I know that's just the beginning here too. Mohit and the team have been talking through a bunch of other wish list items. One of the other things we had previously scoped, we have not quite started it yet, but the ability to add attachments to your time entries, which really will help close out the loop on things that people still have to bail into Outlook for at the moment. So in a world where you're not sending any attachments back to a customer, yeah, you can be over here entirely, but as soon as you need to be able to add on an attachment to that follow-up reply, we'd do well to be able to allow you to add the attachments to those time entries, communications that you enter in down here. So some more stuff to be coming, and there's a whole other laundry list of new fields and other requests and things to add to it. So yeah, we're at a point, I should say, between some of these other projects and planned product development items where we're putting some attention back into the ticketing system here for round 2 for this year. Jim, I see you got your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, we had a customer ask about tying in a phone system, a VoIP phone system into this for customer support people.
Yeah, what phone system were they using? Do you know?
They mentioned it, but I do not recall the name.
The way these tend to work, and the way it works with Teams actually, but usually those newer VoIP systems now, my old company had ShoreTel that did this too. They'll have an app on your system to handle telephone links. So as really then anywhere where you present in a web app a hyperlink that's classified as a hotel, that will tell the operating system to open up whatever's registered as the phone dialer. That's the same deal that works on your mobile app too. So generally speaking, that's where we would want to guide people. And that becomes a pretty easy touch then, just making sure anywhere they want their agents sitting, that phone numbers are presented as links, just like email addresses are presented as mail tos, which kicks over to the operating system to open the email client of your choice. But anything beyond that would warrant a deeper discussion with that customer and the specific phone system they're using and the specific data flows they would want between the phone system and the application, right?
Yep.
Pretty simple to have the link to click, more complicated to have the phone system be able to send an alert to the application or to send some information to the application to automatically load you into something. Although again, last life, we had some of that stuff set up with the ShoreTel system. So, if you put them into an IVR and let the customer enter their account number, and then it's transferred to an agent, well, the phone system could send that phone number through to the application to preload the account for the user so that they don't have to, you don't hit that kind of classic trope of, I just entered my phone or my account into the IVR, and now I'm talking to an agent having to restate all the information I just gave you in the automated system. So it'd be interesting to dig into more, but yeah, heavily phone system dependent there.
The actual integration that they wanted, Jim?
They would like to have as much integration as they can get, but they don't mind taking, baby steps to get there.
It sounds like no. They didn't get specific with any requests. They just said, we want everything you can give us.
Yeah.
So
I mean, they specifically want, They would want to have the system, when somebody calls in, if possible, have it automatically recognize the phone number and route it to the right person.
Which is really a phone system question before it becomes an us question, just knowing how those phone systems and IVRs get deployed. But that was a good question. Just maybe tap me into that conversation and I can help you sort through it with them.
Will do.
Good stuff here. Jam-packed day, and thanks again to John for helping to break things up in the middle. It was nice to see how some of you are starting to use AI. Fair to say, if you have any questions on using AI within VS Code, go bother John. But no, we're all happy to help you there too. So if you saw something that sparked your interest, please don't be shy to try it out and raise your hand if you need help. I'm sure John is willing. I'm sure Andrew is willing, but also app dev team is willing to plug in with you too and help give you some time. So any other questions from anybody? Cool. Thank you very much for showing up.